Welcome and good morning once again to our weekly business community support discussions that we do here on the Main Street Fort Dodge Facebook page and also on the Alpha Media YouTube channel. These are interactive shows, so if you have a comment or question that you'd like to leave us right here on Facebook, we'll try to answer that right during the show. We're excited today to have a great guest lined up, but before we get to that, let's talk with some of our folks that we talk to every week. Of course, Cheryl O'Hearn with Spin Market Digital. Good morning, Cheryl.
Good morning, and yes, happy Thursday, and we are looking forward to hearing what Brent has to talk about in farm management and in agriculture in our community and around the state.
Well, we also want to welcome Chris Patrick from Main Street Fort Dodge. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us again.
And of course, Kimberly Tiefenthaler with the America's SPDC here in Iowa. Good morning, Kimberly. Good to have you with us again.
Good morning. Thank you.
Yeah, we're looking forward to all those updates because I know that you have been busy. So.
A little bit. Yes.
All right, well, let's bring on our guest today. We have joining us today, we have Brent Larson from Sunderman Farm Management. And Brent has an interesting industry that some people maybe didn't even know existed. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Good morning, Brent.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Good morning.
Yeah, so we were kind of talking a little bit about the show that before the show that farm management is something that, you know, a lot of folks out there, maybe even some folks in the farm industry didn't even know is a thing.
Right. You know, when people own farmland for years, typically they own it in the family and they take care of it for a generation or two. They farm it themselves, or they get it from mom or dad and they continue to own it. But at some point in time, sometimes they say, "Hey, I wonder if we're making all the best decisions for this farmland. Are we carrying on the legacy and making smart decisions to keep this asset, you know, going successfully into the future?" And that's where we can step in and really kind of hold their hand, be a trusted third-party, disinterested group that can come in and help them make some of those decisions. As markets fluctuate and the farm owner, especially a second or third generation farm owner, sees the swings of the market, sometimes they wonder what's the right answer. So we stand by to help them, just like any other investment manager can do, except that we're managing the hard assets of farmland and commodities as opposed to the paper assets of mutual funds in the stock market.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit into more detail about some of the things that you do. So this comes directly from your website, if anybody, you know, cares to go and check out some of those things. But let's talk about, you know, who you guys are, some of the things that you do, and part of that is brokering land deals.
Absolutely. When folks want to increase their land holdings, we can certainly go purchase a farmland for them, purchase a piece of farm land for them, because we are licensed real estate brokers. And we can easily go out there and find something that meets their requirements. Everybody has different preferences. So some people want, you know, a perfect piece with no issues. Other people might want a piece that might cost a little less, that they might have to make some improvements on. Also correlating in with that is if it's time for a family to liquidate their assets, we can certainly help them with that, because obviously we can sell the farmland as well as buy it and manage it. So we stand by to help with that all the time.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about what the market's like right now when it comes to farmland. You know, what are prices looking like? Are people getting what they're hoping to out of their farmland? Are people looking to buy more land, increase their acreage right now? Kind of what's the market bearing right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. With the recent strength in grain prices since roughly September, October timeframe, it's really made the market a little bit stronger. Interest rates remain low, so it's fairly easy in the big scheme of land purchasing. Now is a good time to take out a loan if needed, just because interest rates are low. Also, there's not a lot of land on the market, so that's really supporting land prices. So if a person is interested in selling, now is a pretty good time to sell, because our markets are holding strong and are appreciating a little bit because the grain markets have gone up. The value of land is what the land can produce. And as grain, corn, and soybean prices go up, then that drives the price of land up because you can get more return from it, and therefore can justify paying a higher price.
Sure, makes sense. So some of the things that you guys do is actually go out to the farms themselves and visit the farm, put your, I guess, boots on the ground, if you will, and see what that farm is really capable of doing.
Right, absolutely. We are, one of the things that's really unique about us is we also farm our own family farmland. So not only can we speak from the desk perspective and a financial perspective and getting a return on your asset and a return on your investment, we can also speak directly from what happens in the tractor. How do you plant the crop? How do you harvest the crop? What herbicides need to be used? What conservation options are there on a particular farm based on its topography or its proximity to other features on the landscape like a forest or a river valley or a stream. So that's really unique about us. When we go out to a farm, we look at it through several different lenses, not just from the lens of a farm manager sitting behind a desk. We have the boots on the ground and the actual farming experience perspective from the farmer side of it. So we can help an owner figure out what will work, what is feasible, what's the pie in the sky goal, how can we get there? If their current farmer, if their current operator isn't doing that, how can we help them do that? Again, another very unique aspect of our company is that since we all do farm here on our own family farms, we will experiment with some of the new cutting edge technology, some of the new practices such as cover crops, such as the Conservation Stewardship Program and other government programs that enhance conservation. We'll experiment on our own farmland so that when an owner comes to us and says, I'm interested in this. I read an article in the Wall Street Journal or on Ag News Daily or on some other publication they received or on the web, on the internet, we can speak intelligently about that and say, here's what we have experienced ourselves. Recently, I've had a lot of conversations just in the last 2 weeks on carbon markets and emerging details with carbon farming and lots of details surrounding that. So it's been fun for me to have the personal experience with those to say, hey, here's what I've learned, and here's the ins and outs of it. So we become a trusted partner to help landowners make smart decisions, and we dovetail right in with the farmers to help them understand what the owner would like to see their farm do in the future, and we can help them along that path if they're interested and if they're not already doing some of those practices.
Yeah, so one of the things that it sounds like you guys do a really good job of is just the transparency piece, because it's one thing to walk away from your farm and say, okay, I'm going to trust Sunderman Farm Management to handle these, but then as I'm gone, I want to know what's going on with my land. So you guys do a lot of things to help with transparency as well for the farmer.
Absolutely. Transparency and trust is, what an owner gets from us. One of the main things that we get feedback on is that they have peace of mind. You can't have peace of mind unless you have a trusted person to work with. So we develop that trust by having the transparency through on many farms. We do monthly reports and monthly accounting statements, because the financials are near and dear to everybody's heart, because of money is very important to everybody, and we want to make sure that they know exactly where all the money is, where each penny is going. So we have very explanatory reports and accounting statements to let them know what's happening on their farm. If they need any more information, they know we're just a phone call away. We stand by to help people virtually at all hours of the day and night if we possibly can. So yes, that we're a trusted partner, giving them peace of mind that they know that someone is helping them make smart decisions on their farm, so that they're getting what they want, whether it's more conservation or more return or a certain type of practice on their farm with a certain type of farmer. We see some people wanting to take advantage of the beginning farmer tax credit that the state of Iowa offers. It's a phenomenal program. We love trying to get more beginning farmers on the farms and farming in our country, because that's what makes our rural communities go around. Having folks out there who are getting into the mix and trying out different things, and we're there to support them to the extent that we can.
Well, it's a great point that you bring to it about the beginning farmer, because many farms are, second, third, fourth generation farms and have been there for a long time. And many people simply just grew up on the farm and almost learned farming by osmosis, right? Just from being around it. But there's also a lot of people who may be interested in starting a small family farm and need a little help to get things going right at the beginning.
Absolutely. Yeah, the beginning farmer tax credit is an incentive for owners to rent to someone who is still under a certain amount of net worth. I don't know exactly what that number is, but there's a certain qualification. It doesn't necessarily relate to age at all. It really strictly relates to net worth. So if someone wants to get into farming at age 45, if they meet the net worth qualifications, then they could potentially stand to benefit from Iowa's beginning farmer tax credit. And it's really fun to be able to help some folks get in the door. A lot of times those folks are also into livestock, because livestock can be a good way to start smaller and to build up some assets, and then have the ability to leverage that into buying a small piece of farmland. So it's a great program that we have available to us.
Well, we've talked a lot about grains and grain prices and the grain farmer, but is the rancher somebody that you work with as well?
Here in our area of Iowa, a lot of the livestock have gone off the farmland. So we do have some farmers who run corn and soybeans and alfalfa on our farms. But at this time, we actually don't directly influence any livestock decisions, other than when we have the ability to get a farm located near a source of manure. Manure can be a great fertilizer amendment, and we really love being near a hog barn or a cattle operation or a chicken operation where our owners and farmers can benefit from having manure co-located nearby. So that's kind of currently where the market is here in our area of north central Iowa. You get farther west and farther south, where the landscape changes, then you get into a lot more animal agriculture. But here on the farms we specifically manage, we actually don't have any livestock that we specifically manage anymore, other than trying to take advantage of honestly some of those young farmers who are out there trying to make $1 and building some barns or having a small cattle herd, getting into sometimes a niche market for either pork or for beef. There's lots of opportunities out there. Another unique thing about us is that we are members of the Practical Farmers of Iowa. Again, we're farmers at heart. We're farmers, and we've managed farmland professionally, so we can speak intelligently on both sides of the fence there. The Practical Farmers of Iowa organization has lots of opportunities and lots of help in the background to help a young farmer get started if that is someone's desire. And we stand by to partner with them as well to help that along the way to whatever extent we can.
That's fantastic. So there's a couple other things that we're going to get to on your website, but before we do that, I'd like to kind of backtrack and talk about the last year, because we're just about a year now, a little under a year from when we all first really started to experience coronavirus and COVID-19. And I'm just kind of curious, from your perspective and the folks and the farms that you work with, what was the impact that you saw as we really got into March and saw some of the lockdowns and some of the real impacts that began to hit, I assume, not just Iowa, but our farmers as well?
Well, it sure made doing business a little bit different there, as we kind of sometimes we had to have our door locked or have reduced access to our own office. Currently, still the Farm Service Agency offices, it's a challenge to get into them. They really want you to call ahead and make sure they know what's happening. The local co-ops have their doors locked for the most part. Again, just doing business has become a little bit more challenging. I think we've all adjusted very, very well to it. It's promoted more things like Zoom calls for meetings or any sort of online technology. It has pushed a lot of our land auctions to be online only, or a hybrid of online and in person. But if you're in person, you might have to limit the crowd size. So that's another nuance to deal with. But farming has to go on. Planting happened. The nice thing is about farming, when you're out there in your tractor and alone, you are isolated. You're probably a half mile from the nearest person. So the 6 feet, the 6 foot distance was easy to maintain, generally speaking, on most farms. So planting went on, everything went on fairly normally in the field. It's just that when it came to doing business in town with the co-op and the government agencies, you really had to kind of call ahead and know what was everybody's situation and who can you go visit and who do you have to just strictly call or email. It's also driven payments to be more online. So we're getting a lot of people signing up for ACH as opposed to going to pick up a check, for example.
Yeah. So one of the things in just, I think, business in general is we've started to see some supply chain issues where, certain appliances have been very difficult to get because they can't get parts for assembly and things like that. Were there any particular products that were more difficult to obtain due to the virus?
I would say the more difficult things were simply maybe parts at the parts dealer. Some odd little things, but it wasn't terrible. We didn't have any terrible downtime because a certain part wasn't available. Ag chemicals, fertilizer products, the things at the co-op seemed to be fairly stable. Either they were in place or they were able to get them. So thankfully, cross our fingers, that didn't have a major effect on the actual process of farming, getting chemicals applied, getting fertility products applied. It was just a matter of, who was someone sick that day? Was the applicator sick? Did the local farmer or the co-op or one of the retailers have someone out that day, or have several people out that day? So that's kind of the main hiccup that happened around here locally.
Well, and I know that, if you look at resiliency, our ag community is about as resilient as a community as you could possibly find. And so our farmers are going to find a way to get the crop in the field. They're going to find a way to harvest it. They always seem to find a way.
Absolutely. We just want to get out there and get it done, and try to push ahead and keep everything as normal as possible. At the same time, you got to realize that sometimes you have to be careful and either not do something or wear a mask if you're doing it, or just be a little more careful and aware of the situation around you and who is at high risk and with respect to the pandemic, just to make sure we're trying to keep everybody safe for another day.
Well, I'm really curious about these online land auctions. I know that you've said, and this has been my experience too, with a number of the auctions that we work with, many of them are moving to a more online model. And I'm curious what you've seen as far as the response to that. Do you get the same kind of response that you would get in an in-person auction, or what are the nuanced differences that you might find?
That's interesting. We've seen a great response. I think what it boils down to is if someone is interested in buying the farm next door, or someone's interested in it, regardless of where they're located around the globe, they will find a way to make sure that they can put in a bid on that farm if that's what they want to do. Yes, it can be challenging. Yes, not every internet connection is great out there in rural Iowa, but by and large, we have not seen any problems. It does require a little more coordination up front to make sure if someone doesn't have a good internet connection, you can kind of talk them through, here's some suggestions, here's where you could go to get a good connection. But it's really, like you said, the ag world is resilient, farmers are resilient, they will find a way to make it work. We haven't really seen a negative effect as far as through the prices that we are seeing at auctions, because they've been solid. It goes back to the grain price. Grain prices are strong, so land prices are remaining strong, even though we're having to take some auctions 100% online.
Just the nuts and bolts of you running a business. When you look at having to move a lot of these online, were you already set up to do that, or was that something that you had to adjust on the fly?
By and large, we were kind of already set up to do it, but then we had to jump into it 100%. Once the rubber met the road, and it was time to go. But there's lots of platforms out there that are available to choose from. So if the first one you pick you don't like, there are other platforms out there that are available. So that was remarkably easy to jump in with both feet first. So it was no problem really.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what's going on currently with grain prices and how that's affecting farmers. I understand that there has been a bit of a dip recently in some of those grain prices, and how's that affecting things?
Yeah, that we had a dip and now we're right back up. We are such a global market. We are affected by what happens outside of both coasts and around the world. Um, it boils down to demand, and when we have good demand from other countries, especially China, our prices will be strongly supported. Plus, the USDA is showing that we don't have as much grain in the ending stocks from past harvests, so that's supporting prices as well. So when you have good demand and maybe a mediocre supply or an okay supply or a below average supply, that's going to make your markets trend up. Yes, there are corrections along the way, and that's good for the market. That's a healthy market has a correction here or there, and that's okay. And that, like I've mentioned before, that correction is needed by the livestock folks so they can buy feed at a lower price than at the top of the market. So, but we're such a global market that if something happens, around the other side of the globe, it can affect us in a matter of minutes. It's unique these days that everybody knows up to the second what's happening in our partner countries. So that is unique but that's been in play for the last 20 years. It still is amazing to know that if a country is having a problem, half a globe away from us, it can affect us in an hour.
So as we all know, over the summer, we were experiencing a pretty severe drought in many places. Did that play a role in the level of supplies that are available locally? And then also, it was sort of topped off with a number of farmers being hit with the derecho that came through last August, just before harvest time. So how did those things play into the supply?
Yeah, they definitely played into the supply. Absolutely. When you reduce our yields with either a derecho wind event that just flattens it, coupled with a drought, that absolutely lowers our supply. And however, the other thing to keep in mind that just because we see a drought here, for example, in Webster County or even this region of Iowa, our neighboring I states, Illinois and Indiana, they probably won't be experiencing that same level of drought. So chances are good that they'll be able to raise possibly a bumper crop that year, which can partially offset some of the drought and the negative effects that we see locally around here. However, it does look like, based on what the USDA is reporting, is that maybe they underestimated, how much the drought and the derecho did affect us this year, and possibly also making some corrections from prior years that they may have overestimated how much grain was available. So those factors are kind of coming together at this point, along with good demand, good export demand, to drive our prices up a little bit.
Well, we always like to see good prices when it comes to grain. So if I can get you to put on your prognosticator hat and look into your magic 8 ball just a little bit as we look out into 2020 and getting crops into the field, and if we can imagine for a moment the snow melting, what are you looking forward to in 2021? Well,
from what the market experts tell us, we read several different sources of information. They're fairly confident that we should have a solid market here for the rest of this year, at least for the next few months anyway. The big driver is weather. So there's a couple of things coming up. The March 31st planting intentions report, that can be a market mover, depending on how many acres of corn and beans get planted around here and in the fringe states around here. Those can affect our markets. The major factor is still weather and demand. And if there is a weather concern in South America where they raise lots of soybeans, that can move our markets up or down quickly over the weekend. Similarly, if the weather here trends hotter or colder, that Mother Nature controls so much of our markets and our final yields. Probably 80-90% of our final yields are really controlled by Mother Nature and what we're provided for moisture or lack of moisture. So depending on what you think the weather is going to do will depend on what the outcome is going to be at the end of the year. But the bottom line is we're going to go to the field to plant a crop, to plant and raise the best crop that we possibly can. Our job is to look forward and take advantage of marketing opportunities that are handed to us today by this market. because a farmer can right now sell grain for harvest out of the field for delivery at harvest, and those prices are strong. They're much lower than cash grain today, but you can still look ahead and book in some decent prices for corn and beans out at harvest, and that's part of our job when we manage farms that are cash rent, where we don't have to deal with marketing the grain. But the other lease types, custom farming and crop share, we're looking forward to fall harvest and seeing, hey, should we make a sale right now when prices are strong? Or how much storage do we have to hold till later? So lots of those decisions are being made now, regardless of what the USDA says, regardless of what the weather is at this moment to be predicted to be.
Well, you're talking about something that I was just about to switch to, and that's really maximizing income for the farms that you work with. And you're talking about some of the ways that you do that. And that's looking ahead, and that's making the best deal that you can, both in the future, or if that just means waiting, it might mean that too.
Right, exactly. We do our best to implement the wishes of the client, and sometimes maximizing income is at the top of the list. Other times there are other aspects of the dynamic farming system that might be at the top of their priority list. But certainly marketing is an important one regardless.
Well, there's definitely a lot going on. One of the ways that all of us can improve our bottom line, though, is by controlling those expenses. And it sounds like that's something that you guys take a look at to make sure that there isn't frivolous money going out the door, or money that might even be needed to be spent, but might need to be spent at a different time.
Right. One of the major things we do as we get toward the end of the calendar year is plan ahead. We're always, whenever we receive income for a farm, we look ahead to see how much of this income do we need to hold back in our account to pay the farm's expenses. One of the main expenses we pay in the fall is the crop inputs. So in the November, December, and January timeframe, the vendors of those farm inputs will sometimes offer 3 to 20 to 30% discounts. If we can keep some money and pay those upcoming crop inputs and get a significant discount on them, that's the best money we can make for an owner, is to simply spend their money wisely and spend as little of it as possible to get everything they need to put a crop in.
Well, Brent, it's been great having you on and talking about some of these farm things. I want to invite Cheryl to jump in, because Cheryl, you're so involved with the ag industry personally. It's something that you and your family deals with on a regular basis. And I'm just kind of curious, as you hear some of these things, it's got to make sense to think of just somebody looking in from the outside to say, okay, here's what's working and here's what's not.
Yeah, you're exactly right. You know, we do farm a couple thousand acres, and in a variety of areas as well. So as Brent indicated, what we see here in Webster County, if we have some property in Calhoun County or Pocahontas County or whatever, they see different weather issues as well. It'll rain in 5 miles from one field, and another field won't have anything. So it's always a battle. And Brent brought up an interesting comment on that, talking about buying in the fall for the next year. So it is a gamble every year. I know last year we ended up doing more corn than beans, because beans had dropped significantly in price. So he upped the number of acres in corn versus beans, and then things turned around and beans have gone back up. Well, last year it looked like a good deal. This year maybe it wasn't. So you're always gambling, and you're always trying to figure out, okay, what is it going to be a drought next year? So that the type of corn or soybeans that you plant, that factors in as well. So there's just so many interesting. I don't know a profession that has more gambling going on than necessarily a gambler. Wouldn't you agree, Brent?
Oh, absolutely. As soon as we put seed in the ground, we're gambling that we're going to get a crop. But it's a lot, in my opinion, it's a lot more fun than going to the Wild Rose and pulling the lever. So it's 100% a gamble.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Your sweat and equity, just your equity is a lot of sweat and hard work, and just to be able to, I hear every spring, Did you see it? Did you drive by? Did you see the corn is up? Did you see it up? It up?
Right.
That's the ecstatic part. The corn's up. The beans are up. Oh, did you see? Did you see? There's no weeds down the rows. All those things. They take a pride in it as well.
Absolutely.
So Brent, just jumping off of Cheryl's point a little bit, as you're looking at what to plant, how do you go about making that decision? Because it would be really easy to say, well, the prices on this they're higher, so we're going to go 100% into this or 100% into that. But I'm guessing that you guys take a more diversified approach than that.
Typically, the diversified approach works better for most farming entities and most farmers. A lot of that can be decided based upon the farm's logistics. Do they have enough grain storage to hold all the corn or all the beans off of this particular field or group of fields? Do they have a grain handling facility of their own? How are they set up for handling that grain throughout the winter and moving snow and delivering it to market with a straight truck or a semi? Or how do they have an ethanol plant nearby, or a Cargill or a CJ Bio? Where can that grain go? Do they need to get rid of it all in the fall and take it straight to the local elevator or co-op? All those come into play. So farming is such a dynamic industry. It's not just plant a seed and grow it and sell it in the fall. There are so many decisions that go into it, and that planting decision: do you plant corn or plant beans? For us personally, we rotate every field from corn to beans every year. We have some small grains that we're playing with to get some fields into a 3-crop rotation. So we have that nuance also. But largely, people are a corn soybean rotation. If they have the flexibility with storage on the farm, that's where some folks can make shifts. They can shift, a day before planting if they want to. But a lot of times, what you've set your field up for also matters. Did you put on nitrogen in the fall for corn? Well, if you did that, you're probably not going to plant beans on that field. So we tie our hands in the fall sometimes based on how we treat that field in the fall from a fertilizer perspective.
Really interesting stuff, Brent. So I know there's so much more that we could talk about, but let's get people some information to reach you and Sunderman Farm Management. If people want to find out more information about you, how do they do that?
Sure. Simply give us a call. We're here all the time. Email us or stop by here. We are right next to the Fairway store. We're at 1309 First Avenue South. Our phone number is 515-576-3671, or feel free to email me anytime, brent.larson@sundermanfarm.com.
Great. So good to have you on. And we're going to sort of switch gears and talk about some other things. You can feel free to stay on if you like, or if you need to hop off and get moving, we understand that too.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Brent.
Thank you, Brent. Great.
Let's bring on Kimberly from America's SBDC and talk a little bit about some of the things that have been going on. We missed you last week, but you were sort of, I'm guessing, buried in paperwork and phone calls because there was so much going on.
Sorry about that. I have my mic muted. Yes, buried, but all in good stuff and good information. Definitely spending some time with SBA on the facts, things like that. So anyway, there's a lot of good things happening for business owners to be aware of. As everyone has probably heard the rumors, it's not a rumor, but for Iowa, our government, where did I put that? For the Iowa Restaurant and Bar Relief Program. So that's a great thing that's coming out. And the main thing that I can say about that is to get ready. Make sure that you're ready for that, because that will open up on February 1st at noon. And it will run through Monday, February 15th at 5 p.m. So I think it's going to be a hard stop at that time. And so, do everything you can to be prepared, get your information together, make sure you know what is needed, and be ready for that. So all applications within the application period will be considered for an award. The program is not a first come, first serve basis. So that's important to acknowledge as well, because we've kind of been used to that in the past. in March, April, May. A lot of things were first come, first serve until the funds ran out. So here's another interesting point. I thought that no documents will be uploaded. There's no requirement for that. So that's another piece that will bring some relief to some business owners. The application then, because you're not uploading documents, is based on a self-certification. So they're trusting that you are providing accurate, good information. They will, however, be reviewing applications. They've asked for help from the Alcohol and Beverage Division and the Department of Inspection and Appeals. So both of those divisions cover the bar, restaurant sector, and they will be helping with applications to make sure that everyone applying is in good standing. So that's also an important thing to keep in mind as well.
Kimberly, where do people make those applications?
You know, all the information is on ieda.gov. And so that's the Iowa Economic Development Authority. And so that is where you can definitely go to find detailed information. If anything is confusing about the process or whatever, of course, people can always reach out to the SBDC, and we're here to help you through that application process and to make sense of some things that may not be clear to you. And, you know, so evidently, this is a very focused grant program, like what we're seeing from the federal government with the PPP and the next EIDL offerings. They're very focused. So that broad sweep that we saw earlier has definitely been tailored down and is more focused to small businesses and underserved communities. And I think that's really good. There's some good things about that, certainly for independent business owners and to get that relief that they need. So yes, ieda.gov.
Got it. Okay, so we've talked a lot about you know, some of the programs that are coming along, and it seems that we have kind of a second round of some of these things. Where are those in the process? Are those because the last time we talked, and I think that was probably 2 weeks ago, many of the banks were still a little unsure of what the rules and the regulations were even themselves. And I mean, I think as time has gone along, hopefully there's been a little bit of clarification on those.
Right. So I can tell you that the lenders are getting updates constantly. We get all those same updates from SBA, and you know, there's big highlights on them that they're a lender notice. So anything that's going on in the background between SBA and the lender, you know, be rest assured that the communication lines are open and they're taking care of things as questions arise and what have you. There's also lenders have a direct line that they can contact SBA and get help immediately or nearly as that goes. So to be sure to expedite their questions and get that handled. As far as a business owner is concerned, your lender is your best resource in this situation because they are directly dealing with this. They're experienced from this from the first round. Our lenders did a great job. Our community banks have done a fantastic job with embracing this program and making sure that they do everything they can to get the first round finished and are doing the same thing with the second round.
Got it. Well, let's talk a little bit about sort of your experiences over the last couple of weeks, because I'm sure you guys are just being inundated. Now, are those businesses who are seeking assistance, or are you guys talking to entrepreneurs who are looking to maybe start a business right now?
You know, it's really very interesting because it really runs the gamut totally, which is kind of exciting. And I really think it shows the American spirit. The entrepreneurship is still alive and well, and people are pushing forward. And there are buildings that are for sale, and there are people that want to buy them to, you know, make sure that they are in a storefront or, you know, keeping those buildings open on our main streets or reopening them. We're seeing that happen. We're seeing business transitions. There are people in the communities that we serve that are very interested and passionate about those businesses staying open. And so we're working with business transitions. We're also working with businesses that are needing to restructure some debt. So, there are businesses that are hurting, certainly. And we're talking with those businesses and seeing what we can do to help restructure debt. There are businesses that are restructuring debt just because they're looking down the road, and they're really just trying to be wise and looking at interest rates and things like that. As Brent mentioned, interest rates are at an all-time low, and if you can restructure some things and it just makes good sense, then we're certainly seeing businesses do that. So it's just all over the place, and it's kind of exciting that way.
Yeah, it's good. Well, let's talk a little bit about what's going on locally, Chris, because there's a lot going on in the downtown, as there always is. Of course, we just got piled up with snow, and that always makes things interesting as well. But kind of talk to us about some of the things that are going on downtown here in Fort Dodge.
Absolutely, Jed. So even though you do have to maneuver around a little snow, downtown is definitely open and ready for everybody to come downtown and either shop or go in some of your favorite service businesses. We're still seeing that trend that Kimberly's seeing with business transitions, people purchasing buildings, some multi-use applications. These would be longer range plans where we're seeing people, investors interested in putting in more apartments with some service or retail on the bottom floors. So none of that has stopped. We took a bit of a time out there for a while, but the resurgence is really huge. Also, we've got our Open for Business contest through Main Street, Iowa, that opened at the state level on January 11th. To apply, you have to be a business that's expanding or doing something different, new product lines, etc., or opening a business within the Main Street district. Here in Fort Dodge, that's the 33 square block district from 13th to 3rd Street, 1st Avenue North to 2nd Avenue South. So if anybody is interested in that, please reach out to me. You do have to go through the Main Street program to apply for that. There will be a local contest, and then at the state level, the finalist will be awarded $28,000. So that's a huge chunk of money that can go a long ways. Ethan Becker last year, our local applicant who won $250 locally, moved on and won $18,000. So you do not have to be from a huge city, Main Street community to win these funds. You just have to be really creative in how you are managing your business. So more to come on that. We will be holding a local contest, and that will be on our Facebook page. If you've been following our downtown revitalization project, with the snow and the cold temperatures, we are taking a week-long break from any work on the buildings in the downtown. So if you don't see anything going on, that is why hopefully we can jump back into that project next week and keep moving forward with that. We're still working with some businesses from the mall to see if we can find appropriate locations for them in the downtown. And as always, there are several great white box spaces that businesses of any size can come into in the downtown, whether it's a service business where you just want an office space looking for 600 square feet, or if you're looking for 6,000 square feet. So please reach out to mainstreetfd.org and we can hook you up. How's that, Jed?
I like it. That's perfect. All right. Well, I think that's most of what we have to talk about today. But as always,
just a sec. Kimberly, do you have anything on the idle? I don't know that we hit that part. I'm sorry.
Yes. So when you have questions about the economic injury disaster loan, for those of you business owners that already have that and you did not get the complete $10,000 grant, SBA will be contacting you. So there's nothing that you need to do at this time. So don't panic about that piece of it. And quite honestly, we're waiting for a little bit more information, verbiage to come out about new applicants and that advance grant. So hang on tight. Always be watching the Facebook page for the North Central Iowa Small Business Development Center. We always post as currently as we can the good information that we know, the factual information. But there is some good news there for business owners who did not receive that full $10,000.
Sure, thank you. I know I've had several people ask me about it, and I just keep saying, just keep watching. It hasn't been officially. You're not missing anything. You're okay, guys.
Right. Yeah, we're all okay. So, but it is coming. Good news is coming.
That's great news. Well, Cheryl, I'm excited about next week as well. So tell us a little bit about who our guest is going to be next week.
Well, our guest is Gary Kroger, and Gary is actually a Cedar Falls native. He was born and raised in Cedar Falls, left for a while, and is back. You may, if you want to Google him, you will see he was a Second City in that comedy group, and also was on Saturday Night Live for 3 years. He's worked with Disney and numerous other companies. He had a successful restaurant in California, brought a successful restaurant to Cedar Falls, and he's also a very good individual to talk about branding. So he does live in Cedar Falls, Waterloo area, and he will be coming on talking to you about branding, understanding how branding works, and just some really good insight to help companies to really looking at the big world of brand and what you really want to do, and be a little more insightful when you start thinking about how you want to get that message out there and make it a long-term net message, not something that you're just going to do one day and change the next. But you'll find it very interesting, so I'm anxious to get him on.
Very, very good. Well, I'm excited for next week. Well, that's going to do it for this week's show on our business community support discussions. Our guest this week, Brent Larson. Brent, thank you so much for joining us and sharing all your expertise when it comes to everything ag, and even sharing a little bit about how our pandemic has affected us over the last year. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, so as always, we want to thank our regular contributors, which include, of course, Kimberly Tiefenthaler, with the Regional Director of America's SBDC here in Iowa. Also, Chris Patrick, the Executive Director of Main Street Fort Dodge, and Cheryl O'Hearn with Spin Marketplace Digital, and Jed Burns, Market Manager for Alpha Media here in Fort Dodge. Make sure you join us next week, same time, 9 a.m. Thursday on the Main Street Fort Dodge Facebook page. And you can also catch us on the Alpha Media YouTube channel as well. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Have a good week.
Bye.
Bye.